All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the program today. It's early in April. It's Tuesday, April the 3rd. This is Backtalk. I'm your host, Paddy Daley. Producers Megan Homer, Patrick Murphy are running the program this afternoon, as per usual, to my delight. So, well, I think it's safe to say that things have just got a lot more interesting. Muskrat Falls for an awful long time was a point of contention for sure. Part of the conversation, absolutely. All the opponents too, with a variety of issues that they point to in their opposition to the development of the Lower Churchill River, or at least a piece of. But things have just got a lot more interesting. The provincial government was long accused of those who were commissioned to analyze, review, and then report on Muskrat Falls as an option for power generation. The accusation was always leveled that the terms of reference were too narrow. They were too strict. They didn't include all potential power generation sources, alternatives. They only offered two options, pick the least cost of two, which does not necessarily mean the least cost of all. The questions have been rigged. That's been the comment. So when the PUB was commissioned to do the exact same thing, when the report came out, they couldn't pick between the two offered based on lack of information, accurate and up to date, reflective of what the final deal will indeed look like, and such is their prerogative. Their experts that they hired had made other determinations. They did indeed support whether or not the terms of reference were too strict, whether or not the question was not reflective of all that need to be asked. The experts, others, involved with this particular review, they thought there was a choice. So this happens, and of course it's a curveball thrown at the provincial government. Their reaction has to be, in the batter's box, to adjust your feet, look for a different pitch. They won't all be fastballs. Some of them are going to be splitters and some curveballs. One just delivered, one of many. 1 second. We're back. So on the heels of that review, the provincial government did what you thought was maybe a good play politically. What they've said now is we will do a complete about-face. There will indeed be a special sitting of the House of Assembly as requested, called for, demanded by many. We're going to do it. In addition to that, we're also going to provide documentation of up-to-date reviews, analysis of other alternative forms of energy. Complete about-face. All the while, half-heartedly disappointed. I think the Premier was pretty crooked with the pub, but the ministers who have represented that same position have not been as cross or outspoken as the Premier. She refers all the way back to the built-in bias comments that were offered by Chairman Andy Wells and others, and those calling for an expanded term of reference in the PUB. So there's your one. The architect of the deal. That's not a bad word. The person who delivered the deal and announced it on behalf of the province, the provincial government, and Alcor was former Premier Danny Williams. Williams today, of course, sends out a news release based on the PUB report. He is disappointed by the indecisive PUB report on Muskrat development, is the title of. He said he was deeply disappointed in the indecisive nature. And more so, I was troubled by the conclusions put forward by the board, largely based on opinions of private citizens, as opposed to the experts at Nalcor and Manitoba Hydro. He goes on to say he's really seriously concerned that the pub included all of those particular quotes from private citizens in opposition to. The PUB said, we don't have enough time to do it. We need more time. We need an extension. Extension granted. We need another one. Sorry, shot down. March 31st, deliver your report. The public consultation was supposed to be the reason for why additional time was required by the PUB. The Premier says, in effect, for asking for an extension is for all the wrong reasons. If your position is you can't make a decision, then it always was your position. Public consultations for what? Further quotes from private citizens, former civil servants? So the public consultation, that played no role at all, because the issues pointed to by the PUB is they didn't have enough detailed, up-to-date information. There's a problem. Mr. Williams is back in. He's back in the conversation. I, like many, were impressed, surprised by Mr. Williams' self-restraint in getting involved, because the Muskrat Falls conversation has had some personal swipes taken by people on both sides. It has indeed included a lot of allegation of people's ulterior motives, their partisan allegiances, their hopes for their own legacy, their own gain, power, influence, possibly money. That's been allegations floated around. People think it. Some have been half gutsy enough to nudge up against it in their writings, in their blogosphere and the like. And today, Bruno Macocchio. Who is Bruno Macocchio? Mr. Macocchio called the program, Randy Sims, this morning up in line and said that we need to have a closer look at all the allegiances that have been tiptoed around, eggshelled over. And what about this? So, once again, one sec. Macocchio says that, of course, Williams is a part of the conversation. And then, as I've been long saying, the whole conspiracy theory about it being a bad project, beyond bad project, beyond the right solution for our power needs, if any, people have indeed been insinuating that there's been upwards of $1 billion spent to analyze and to provide front-end service, due diligence, to sanctioning Muskrat Falls. So beyond a bad project, people have insinuated that this is now more than that. This is what I've scoffed at repeatedly. A big conspiracy theory of allegations, not only of their own personal self-interest and ego stroke, but now there's been some particular allegations that could indeed be viewed as corrupt and criminal. Now, that conspiracy theory, when I hear that stuff sometimes, you know me, you know what I'm like, I say, sit down out of it, will you? But now all the lines have been drawn and people are back in the conversation. Macocchio this morning points to the fact that former Premier Danny Williams is now sitting on the board of a company called Alderon Mining. And his job, so says Macocchio, is that one of the things that company needs is power. Williams there is to deliver the power required. That's not a bad thing. That doesn't say you've done anything wrong. Because believe it or not, like it or not, take it or leave it, like it or lump it, power and influence will always have some position of power and influence in decision-making. They'll get the big jobs and the best jobs. You know why? Because that's how it goes. So if you're sucky looking up, jealous and resentful of everything, then you're going to have a long life of it. Because power and influence will get you some jobs. So now Williams is brought back into the conversation like that. What do you think? Honest to God. The debate in the House of Assembly, the argument from the Premier was, we don't have enough information in the hands of the opposition members to have a legitimate, an educated and responsible debate on Muskrat Falls. It's too complicated. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they're talking about. So now we're going to provide the information to them. I have some dry today. One second. We're back. So now the information will be provided, but then once again, here's the congruence. Here's the seeds of doubt to be planted. They're going to use Ziff Energy, a national energy company. They're going to talk to them about reviewing the natural gas option, but then right out of Kennedy's mouth is we've had conversation with Ziff Energy on matters of other importance, but now they're the company of choice. So what's that mean? The seed of doubt has been planted to the individual or the independent review of the option of natural gas. The seed's been planted. Every report, every commission, so far, the Joint Independent Review Panel, Manitoba Hydro International, Navigant, Wade Lock, on it goes. Whenever it said what someone didn't want it to say, there was a question of independence, a question of who's paying the piper. Allegations that it does not worth the paper it's printed on, it's biased. So now the natural gas reviewer is going to be someone that we already know, we've already spoken to. What does that mean? Generally, shouldn't and not necessarily always mean there's something wrong afoot. But the seed of doubt has been planted. Once again, things have just got a lot more interesting. For a long while, people have been nudging up against SNC Lavalin, one of the benefactors, a lot of the money being spent so far leading up to Muskrat Falls. SNC Lavalin, an internationally disgraced company in recent months. Allegations as serious as smuggling in potential terrorists to the country. Maybe to the States, was it? They've got huge problems all over the world, but they're in it. They're in the contract. They're doing some of the work. Man, things get a lot more interesting. The federal loan guarantee. The insinuation of people not only that are deliver power for mining companies, but how is this damn thing going to get financed? Is $6.2 billion, maybe more now, maybe 7.3 with the additional 1.1 reference recently. Cost overruns could send that wherever it goes. You know what people say. Let's use 10 billion. So how do you get the 10 billion? No one's really talked about exactly how it'll be financed because it hasn't been sanctioned yet. All the ducks aren't in a row. The up-to-date information financially is not in place. The final decisions on reliability and other things are not finalized. So how do you finance it? Well, we're planning on financing it over the very long term, 50 years, whatever it is. We'll see an immediate hike and then a stabilization of rates, which is one way to finance it. The equity question that people say, the Doomer-esque and stuff, you know, they got shot down in the market. 75-25, not acceptable. So they got shot down in the market. How do you finance it? People say, what about the royalty trust agreement? That's where the insinuation of people's bad motives and whatever type of behavior we're going to be talking about. The royalty trust agreement, is that going to be the way it is? People are going to get rich off this if that's how Muskrat Falls is financed eventually? Ooh, man, things just got a lot more interesting. I'm expecting to hear from a bunch of people. Who's Bruno Macocchio? I don't mind Bruno. Bruno yells at me. I don't care, right? Come on with it, Bruno. He's representing the Sierra Club. I'd hazard to guess he's been on the air 30 minutes in the last month, whatever. I don't think he's mentioned the environment once, which is a Sierra Club mandate. That's their initiative. But he has questioned points of law based on formal acknowledgement of Muskrat Falls by the federal government and provincial government. He's questioned the capital financing. He's questioned Williams' position. He's questioned it and called it a scam. What do you think? Give us a call. What do you think? Andy Wells, Danny Williams, the old rivalry. It's back on. Is it? Andy Wells says he's not going to comment. But you know what? Sometimes you just don't get it that convenient. I think a comment is required. So, Mr. Wells, we understand that the PUB has its own mandate. Felt your hands were tied. Were disallowed extensions and whatever you needed to do, in your opinion, to satisfy a report here. Come up with a decision. No comment? Maybe not good enough. Give us a call. People would like to hear. Anyway, let's move on. What do you think of it? Give us a call. Can't wait. Search and rescue. We're up in Ottawa yesterday. The Liberals, in fact, were there. This is another bad thing for government provincially. The provincial Liberals were up there. Mr. Ball, and I saw Randy Edmonds and Yvonne Jones. At least that many were there. I'm not sure who else. 6 of the 7 MPs we've got from the province were up there in Open Ashway. What do you know? And calling for, and now saying that they had the federal government saying we will oblige and comply with an inquiry into what happened with Burt Winters. Premier Dunderdale said we couldn't do it. And we weren't there. And we haven't gone there in public like that and done what the Liberals did to make that an issue. Then McKay, who you know I've beat up on plenty, Helly Pete. Peter McKay says he threw the ball straight back. It is a provincial responsibility, the search and rescue. We will comply and oblige your questions because it's provincial responsibility anyway. Ground search and rescue. Forget where the sea ice was, how far you are off the coast. McKay says it's our issue. An inquiry? I don't imagine the province really wants an inquiry into this. We know there's certain gaps and loopholes and problems with search and rescue. The overlapping commitment and responsibility is grey at best, given the foolishness that just went down and the tragic loss of life, Burt Winters. So the public inquiry, I'm not even sure that's what the government would like to see here. The federal government has said, that was your fault. So that's interesting. The FFAW OCI talks are off. Things have just got a lot more interesting. The insinuation that there was union busting afoot. That's what's going on here. The OCI, as an organization, trying to bust the union. Their latest deal, so says Earl McCurdy, was worse than the last one. And uses and requires things that are in form dividing the union, busting the union. Like you to sign a letter to say that you agree with the request of the company to export in full form, of course, which is pitting the harvester, those trawlermen and the lynx, putting them against their own brothers and sisters who are plant workers, right? Maybe it's just going down the middle where people always see an option or a play with the FFAW, because they do indeed speak for both sides, which is hard to satisfy both needs. So that's what OCI says. You got to do that for us. The issue here is the links. OCI wants them to fish for redfish, which is absolutely a lesser take financially for the boys going home with the cash or check, which was found on turbot and shrimp. Should that be up to the union, what that particular boat fishes for? OCI doesn't think so. What do you think? A lot of things are a huge big deal that are not going to get a lot of play given the complexity and the fascinating turn of events here and a lot of other issues. Generic drugs back on. I heard Sue Kellen Dyer on with Randy this morning, and she said that it's going to be an advertising campaign, both in advertising on the airwaves and in the pharmacies, about what this means to regular Joes. The government says there's a big savings coming, and in return, the brand name companies have jacked up the price immediately. Could that erode the savings from introducing this new generic pricing formulary? I don't know. But that's going to get lost in the shuffle. I got a funny feeling. Pat, how we doing out there? Got a few calls ready to roll? Do you? Okay, I'm quickly going to get going here. One moment. Things just got a lot more interesting, folks. The school down in the Janeway site. I'm with Peter Whittle. I understand the process. How can you understand that process? The site was considered by the Eastern School District and the government, everybody else. Let's have a look, see if this is the right place to put this school to replace the dilapidated third world Virginia Park Elementary. And now, because of cost, not only with remediation of the asbestos in the ground, but then the additional reasoning for, well, public confidence won't be there because it is a known site that has asbestos in the ground and whatnot. Yeah, but you know what? What does that mean? So we're going to sit there and look at that as a pile of dirt forever? That high-priced real estate where there's going to be a huge residential development, and that's one of the fallbacks? So what are you going to do if you build a shed to put snowplows in, one of the operator gets a disease that is loosely linked with asbestos, boom. So, I don't know, I'm not buying it. And then we're going to take another long stretch of time to analyze 3 other sites that may be reasonable or possible, including renovating, expanding a 50-year-old school. Doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound good to me. All right, I think that's about it. I'm going to take a break here. First, we're on Twitter. VOCM Backtalk is how you can follow us there. And that's going to be on the go. I'm just having a quick read. Something's all right. And we're on Backtalk. VOCM.com is our email address. You can get in touch with us there, share your thoughts. But this afternoon, especially all of you who think that a lot of things have come, the stars were aligned. Mr. Williams says the stars were aligned to proceed with Muskrat Falls. The timing, the Aboriginal deals, the environmental assessment, the federal loan guarantee, the cost of doing business, the required power, that's the stars being aligned. For those of you out there who think the stars are now aligned, because there are now more questions than ever, in your opinion and others, for Muskrat Falls. Why? Who benefits? Why? Do we need the power? Is this the least cost option? Who's doing the gas report? What's going on with SAR? What's the Premier talking about? What are the pub doing? Ha ha ha. Come on, we're taking a break, folks, and when we come back, let's talk to you. Come on.